Hey, welcome to the Hidden Manna. In this video, we find ourselves in the Garden of Eden and everything is perfect. Well, almost. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17, God told Adam that he could eat of any tree he wanted except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God commanded the man, saying,
"From any tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat from it you will surely die."
And in Genesis chapter 3, verse 3, we see that this tree is actually planted in the middle of the garden.
Hey, why did God put that tree in the middle of the garden? As a matter of fact, why did He create it at all? If God didn't want them to eat from it, He should have never planted it there.
Well, I know it may not look like it at first, but that was part of God's plan all along. You see, God desires a relationship with us, not slavery or forced obedience. And relationships cannot exist without trust. Trust cannot exist without choice, and choice cannot exist without free will. That tree of forbidden fruit represents our free will. And God said in Genesis 2, verse 17,
"For in the day that you eat from it you will surely die."
See, they had to trust that God was telling the truth, that He wasn't withholding blessing from them, rather, He was keeping them from danger. The existence of that tree of forbidden fruit gave Adam and Eve the opportunity to trust God or to not trust Him. God does not want us to do evil, but there has to be opportunity for us to choose to do evil if free will is to exist. And God does not sin or do anything evil. It's us who chooses to do evil. We are the ones who murder. We are the ones who lie. It's us who does these things. We are the sinners because we have the opportunity to choose not to do evil. Yet, evil is what we often choose. Evil exists because, well, we chose to create it. So, to summarize, that tree represents the existence or manifestation of our free will. If somebody asked me to show them a picture of a circle, well, I'd show them that one right there. If they asked me to show them a picture of a triangle or a square, well, I'd show them right there. But if somebody wanted to see what free will looked like, I could think of no better example than a tree, forbidden fruit, and God's commandment not to eat it. And now, here comes Satan, the devil, slithering his way towards Eve just like temptation so often does. And what does Satan do? Well, he never denied that God spoke to Eve. As a matter of fact, just as a snake twists and turns as it slithers along its path, Satan twisted God's commandment in order to mislead Eve. How exactly did Satan mislead Eve? Well, he distorted Eve's perspective. He caused God's command to appear as a burden rather than a blessing. Look here, God said,
"You may eat from every tree except for one."
but Satan said,
"You can't eat from all of the trees. Plus, you won't die. God knows that when you eat, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil."
That change is so subtle, yet so destructive. God's commands are actually blessings, but Satan's tactic was to twist God's words and make them look like he was keeping something good from them. And it worked too. Eve, believing in the words of Satan and doubting God's command, then looked at the tree and saw that it was good for food and to make her wise. Honestly, that part was probably true. That fruit probably tasted really good, and it did make her wise, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that God said, "Do not eat from that tree." And it was God who created the tree, but it was Adam and Eve who created the disobedience. That tree is not inherently sinful. The sin was in Adam and Eve's disobedience. Think about it. Even God knows the difference between good and evil. There's nothing wrong with that. But God said, "Do not eat from the tree." That's where the sin came from, when they disobeyed God's commandment. And so the next thing that happens is Eve then eats of the forbidden fruit and gave some to her husband Adam. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin covering. As soon as they had eaten, they knew what they had done, and that's why they tried to cover themselves. This is just like how we try to hide from God and even other people when we do things that are wrong. In 1 Timothy 2 verse 14 says, "It was not Adam who was deceived, but Eve. Eve was misled by Satan, but Adam willfully sinned against God. He knew exactly what he was doing." In doing so, Romans 5:17 says, "For by one man's offense, death reigned." And Romans chapter 5 verse 12 also says, "Death came through sin, and death spread to all mankind." Now, don't get too angry at Adam and Eve, because they're not the only ones who've eaten from that forbidden tree. As a matter of fact, we all have. Now, we've all eaten from the things that God has commanded us not to. Now, it may not have been from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but have you ever eaten from the tree of doubt, the tree of dishonesty, the tree of covetousness, or perhaps the tree of pride? Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Whatever the case, we have all eaten that which God has commanded us not to. We have all disobeyed God, including me. While Adam and Eve may have been the first of mankind to sin, they certainly were not the last. Now, in the next video, you'll see that even this was planned. Remember, our God is great, and His plans never fail.